Hello and welcome to Conversations with Conlon and Cully, a new podcast that came kind of out of nowhere just after a random interview catching up with old friend Maria Conlon. We decided there was quite a bit to talk about and we were going to give this a shot. So I am excited to introduce my co-host, Miss Maria Conlon. Hello.
Hello, how are you? So excited.
You are such a great PR person, a great personality, a great person on the microphone. That it's amazing that you don't do more of this stuff. I mean, I would have the Maria Conlon Daily Show. I mean, you could definitely replace Jimmy Fallon as far as I'm concerned.
It's funny, I was just watching a Jimmy Fallon video this morning when he was interviewing Nicole Kidman, and apparently they like went on a date years ago, and he didn't realize that she had a crush on him, and he had her over, and like
Oh no,
totally blew it. It was hysterical.
that happens to me all the time. You never know. You
Yeah,
never know. You can never read the room.
yeah, it's definitely a skill.
We're just completely blind to it.
Yep. So I have a question for you to kind of start this because I've
You're
been thinking about this for a
me?
while.
You're
And
starting with me already? Wow.
yeah, I am because you're a football guy.
You're coming
And
out firing.
so who's your team? Let's start with that.
My team used to be the New York Giants. Okay.
Okay.
And as you know, I played over in Europe like you did, and I played arena football. And I kind of got turned off by it only because it's not the same atmosphere as it was in college, where it's a family and everyone hangs out all the time together. It's a business, and guys had their own families over there. And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way seeing that when we would, whenever we lost games in college, I would go back to my hilltop apartment and smoke Marb Reds and drink whiskey. And my parents would drive 3.5 hours to watch a game. I would get in the car, not say a word. They'd take me back. I'd go in my room. They'd take my friends out to dinner. And then they'd like slip me a $50 bill under the door and say, "See you next week." That's how I hated losing. So when I got to that level and I saw, after the game, guys were just happy to see their family. Guys were just happy to see their kids. Guys didn't take losing as hard as I anticipated they would. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way from a fan perspective. It's like, when the Giants used to lose, I would lose sleep over it, and I would be furious for a week. And I'm like, well, what do I care if they're not if they're playing and they don't care? Why am I caring as a fan? So I really stopped being a super fan right around then. But I still watch it. I just don't specifically like cheer for one team. You know.
Gotcha. Yeah, I tend to like cheer for whatever team my quarterback for fantasy football is that year.
You're smart.
Yeah. But I totally get where you're coming from. I think that that's an interesting take on like professional versus college. And I think like part of what you said is probably healthy and unhealthy, right? Like I think we're so trained as athletes for so long that like you have to be in the dumps when you lose, right? Like at UConn, if we lost, it was like the sky was falling. The state Connecticut was and
You guys won. You guys won so much. You know.
Yeah.
And,
Like, you gotta
and
lose sometimes, right? Like, I think that there's a lot to be taken from a loss versus a win.
huge that you got to overcome that adversity, because
Yeah,
if you're never tested and then you're tested at a really difficult time,
right.
then then you find out whether you can handle it or not.
Yeah, so I think, like, you have to get to a point where you kinda have to look at it as a professional and, like, if you're going home and like, I try to look at it like this, if that's your job, and I do this now with all my current jobs, is, like, I try to when I go home, I try to be present
You
and
have to be.
not bring work home with me. So, I think for those guys, it's gotta be a little bit of that same thing. It's like, "Okay, game's over. I'm gonna hang up the cleats. Now I gotta be
Absolutely.
present."
I,
Um,
I I remember Tony Romo caught so much flack because he went to Cabo with Jessica Simpson the week before a playoff game. They had the week off.
right.
They were the number one seed or the number two seed. They had the week off, and he took a vacation, and it was like he shot the president. Like everyone was furious. How could you do that? What kind of leader are you to set an example like that? And I thought that was taking it a little too far, like you said, especially at that level when you're putting in 8 hour days, 10 hour days, 12 hour days, and you get the time off once every season. Enjoy it. You've earned it.
Yeah, it would have been better if Tony Romo could have backed it up with winning, but unfortunately that never happened. But
He turned into an okay commentator.
yeah, for sure. So
He turned into an okay commentator.
yeah. So all right, so I gotta ask this question then because
Wow,
um
you asking me questions. I'm shocked.
yeah, well it kind of relates to the whole football thing, but I think it's
Huh.
just something that like has bothered me in today's news. But I I am a big Kansas City fan.
Oh,
Um
good.
Mainly because I've had Patrick Mahomes on my fantasy team the last couple of years, so it makes it easy. But how do you feel about all, like, the negativity around and I'm also a Swifty, I gotta admit, I love her music. Like, I just can't understand why people care so much that these 2 are, like, having a good time and, like, dating and, like, doing their thing. Like, what is the big deal?
Well, it's funny you asked that because I have quite a bit of experience dealing with that because the girl I may or may not be seeing is also a Swifty.
Mhm.
I've listened to more Taylor Swift in the last 6 months than I probably ever anticipated listening to my entire life. And she called me. I was over there, and she was devastated that she was dating, Travis Kelce. She's like, oh, she'll never get along with him. He's a football player. He's had other women. He's arrogant, and all the Swifties are worried about her. And I'm like, he's a he's a good guy. He's got a personality, and all like initially, I hated it as well because I do podcasts, and she never liked to listen to my podcast, but she would listen to the Kelce podcast. So I was like, you listen to them, but this is what I do, and you won't even listen to me. So I had a little bit of jealousy towards them, but when I was listening to them, they're very good. They banter well. They have great entertainment. They're hilarious. Their sense of humor, especially Jason. But the hate just grew and it grew and it grew. And I think it's not necessarily just them. I think it's social media altogether. Social media is so toxic and so negative, and it's gotten to the point where it's doing so much harm, and it's doing harm to the younger kids. But when you'd see people making memes, and you'd see people attacking her or attacking him, and it was just completely unnecessary. And the NFL loved it. The NFL loved it because their ratings went through the roof.
Dollar signs, man, dollar signs. Give me the
Anytime
money.
they put them on,
Yeah.
anytime they put them on TV, people would watch them whether they loved them or they hated them.
Well, and they
But
got a totally new demographic from it too, because
they
now you
did.
got all these young Swifties that are like buying Kelce jerseys or tuning in just so they could see Taylor Swift. It's like it's kind of bananas, but I think it goes to like, all right, what's so bad with getting a new demographic?
It's not at all. It's not at
Yeah.
all. It's not at all. I was on the campaign where I did not like it initially because every time he would catch a pass, they'd show her. But I don't think they really knew what they were doing, like the networks. But after like the first few games, then you would see they were more responsible about showing her. And I give her all the credit in the world. She seemed like a genuine football fan. She seemed like she was having fun. She seemed like she got along with everyone she interacted with. And she was a pro. She really was. And she could have been like I, I thought Brittany Mahomes kind of acted a little worse than Brittany Mahomes. I thought was out of line sometimes. I thought that like she would try to upstage Taylor. Taylor would come to the game in jeans and a sweatshirt. Brittany Mahomes would come looking like she was in a makeup chair for 4 hours, and like they'd walk in together like they were besties, and it seemed like they were competing against each other. And I'm sure Brittany Mahomes enjoyed getting the rub from being with Taylor Swift. It's like, hey, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to get a rub from being next to her. But I thought she treated it. She didn't treat it well or handle it as well, because it always seemed to me like she wanted to get attention off of it, and attention for the wrong reasons. And whenever like they would do their little celebrations that was planned out, you could see the genuine, you know, how proud Taylor was of Travis. And I, I never necessarily felt that from Brittany. But as far as your question about it, the social media got way out of hand. Neither one of those people deserved it. Both of them work harder than most people work. Most those people work harder in one day than most people work in their entire life. They do, and that's why they're successful. And it was it was disappointing to see, but like I am anti social media altogether. I think it's done more harm than good.
Yep.
Like, and that's why I would ask you as a coach, especially of girls of that age, how do you deal with it? Because I'm sure girls post stuff and offend each other or offend somebody else, and the bullying, and you can never really get away from it.
Yeah, I think that like social media for me is such a sensitive subject because I think that there are some great aspects to social media, right? Like it's helped these kids
Absolutely.
brand themselves in different ways. It's given them access to information that they wouldn't necessarily have. And there's all different types of social media. Where I'm not really big into social media is, and I tell my kids this all the time. And typically when I have like my parent meeting in the beginning of the season, like I talk about it, like you have to be so careful what you put out there and be so intentional with your content. And I mean that in a bunch of different ways. Like number one, it's out there, anybody can see it. So I'm big on like I see other teams will like post like trash talk stuff on social media either before or after. And like I love it when they do that. Because what do? Like I screenshot it
Oh,
and
it's both
it's in my
positive.
group message and it's a reminder like don't ever be this team. Like it's tacky from that perspective. And I think these kids like they're so obsessed with likes and they're so obsessed with approval. And it's like I heard Denzel Washington. I was listening to an interview that he did, and it was so impactful. And he has a lot of good stuff to say, but he said social media is like a form of the devil in a way because we always have cared if people like us or not, right? Like it's not like you go through life saying like I don't want anyone to like me,
No, we
right?
all want to be liked. We all
Yeah,
want to be loved.
but
Absolutely.
now, like, instead of wanting to be liked by 10 people that you see and that you interact with, we want to be liked by 16 million.
Well,
You
the other thing I don't like is everyone posts. It's all when they show themselves, it's positive. They're living the greatest life on the planet. Everyone loves each other, and
Yep.
everything's going great. We have no problems. And behind the scenes, the reality of it isn't necessarily true.
No.
And that's what's so irritating is I'll see I'll see friends of mine who will post stuff and they want to come off as being the perfect family when they're anything but they want to portray it to everyone that, oh, we're living this perfect life, oh, we have this much money, oh, we're taking this many vacations, oh, we're going on this many family outings. And that's what's disappointing to me is seeing that they don't post the truth. You want to,
No,
if
and
you
I think,
want
like,
to do the truth.
I always laugh because, like, I'll say to some of my friends, like, you can always tell who is in a healthy relationship and who is not by how much they post on social media or don't. Like, I very rarely will post about, like, my marriage, my this. Like, I'll post my kids, like, because,
Yeah,
it's fun,
absolutely.
like, and everything's positive with your kids right now, especially when they're young, um, and you wanna remember that stuff, and it's more like a proud thing than it is like a throwing it in people's face thing. Because there's a lot of other stuff I could post too, but I don't need to throw how
You don't
happy I am in my marriage or in my life, out there for everybody else. And I always say, like, we always have a countdown. Like, if we have a friend who just started a relationship and like all they do is post like all this happy stuff on social media, I'm like, they got like a six to 12 month time bomb going off because if you're really that happy, you don't have time to post on social media. You're busy being happy, doing stuff, right?
yeah,
Um,
not
you
posting
want to
every
capture some moments because they're moments and like as great as it is that we have phones that can get excessive, but it is also nice to be able to capture that stuff. But yeah, I think that social media is a facade. I think that it's given people a platform to create a life that they want people to see and not necessarily a life that they're living. Um, so I think that what I try to tell my players is be really intentional with your content, and it's out there forever. So again, like you got to think about down the road. You
yeah
post something on your Instagram that's like I see some of the kids that I coach go to college and like they're posting stuff. I had this one kid that played for me. She's in college overseas, which like their drinking age is like 14 there or whatever. You know, she's a 17-year-old kid and she's posting these pictures of her partying every day. And I'm like, man, and they're not just like on her story where they disappear, like they're on her thread. And I'm like, to what point you go now and try to get a job and someone's looking at all that saying like, all right, do I really want to hire the kid that's been throwing back beers for the last 7 years? Like, it's a different world. You know, we didn't have to live in that. I mean, thank goodness there was no social media in college. You know, I remember it's funny because we've been talking about Tommy Collins a little bit. And my favorite story of him in college was Diana and I were at Killikeg for spring weekend. And, you know, we had to go to the bathroom. So what do you do on spring weekend, right? Like you gotta go pee in the woods. Well, there were college kids now. Back then it was either like a disposable camera or you had an actual camera. It wasn't like your phone yet where you were snapping pictures. And these two kids followed us into the woods and were trying to take pictures of Diana, like going to the bathroom. And I just remember he walked over, took her camera, and smashed it like into a million pieces. And the kid was like pissed off because his really expensive camera was broke. But the point was like, it's inappropriate, man, right? And I feel bad for some of these superstars. Like it was bad enough when the paparazzi had their cameras following people around, but now you got like everybody taking pictures 24/7, and it's a nutty world.
I wanted to ask you, what was your whole thought about the Brittany Griner situation when she was held hostage over in Russia for as
Yeah.
long as it was.
You know, I have so many feelings on that. And like first and foremost, like I don't care if you're a famous basketball player or you're just somebody walking through the airport. Anytime that you get arrested and held prisoner in that type of situation, like it's awful. And I used to hate like reading posts of people being like, you know,
She,
"Oh, she should stay
yeah,
there, be in prison, she should this, she deserves it." And I'm like, guys, like first of all, like we're talking about a minor offense. If it was in fact even that, like who knows what was planted or whatever other conspiracies we can come up with. But like to leave her there in that situation is awful. And like, yeah, if you can get someone home, you should. Now, would so much have been behind it if she wasn't famous? Probably not, which is a shame, but that's not her fault, you know?
no, she was a
It's
political prisoner, and
yeah, like held there intentionally because she was who she was. Like, would she have even been stopped if she wasn't who she was? Like, probably not. Um, you know, so I just find it like disgusting. You hear people making comments like, "Oh, you know, she's a dude anyways," or "She's this," and it's like she's a human being first, you know. And like I always come from a place of compassion. Is like, you know, that's kind of why I asked the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift question. My whole thing with people in general now is like, why do you care so much what somebody who has zero impact on your life is doing?
it's jealousy and
Like,
insecurity. That's
it's
all
not
it is.
affecting you on a daily basis. Why care, right? And, like, we can get into all this stuff. We can get into LGBTQ and, like, all this stuff. Like, my whole thing is, like, in 2024, if this is not impacting your personal life, why are you even talking about it? Why do you even care, right? Like, it's just a crazy situation, and I'm just big on, like, if it doesn't affect me, like, be you. I don't care what you do in your personal life.
Everyone thinks they have and deserve an opinion,
Yep.
and and everyone likes to stir the pot. Everyone likes drama. Everyone likes to argue, and it's gotten to the point where, especially on Twitter, you go to Twitter feeds and you'll see people just going at it and going at it and going at it and going at it. and especially over politics. And
Yeah. Well, I learned a long time ago, there's two topics that you don't argue about: religion and politics. And it's like, you don't know that by now. I mean, I don't know. But again, I get on there and like I'll read some of the stuff sometimes, and more just because I'm so appalled, because you're talking about someone's daughter, right? And like, so if you're a parent and you have a kid, how you can get on and make these derogatory statements, or if you're a human, you have a sister or you have a mother, right? Everybody has these things. How could you get on there and make some of the comments that you're making? And where is the self-reflection of like, everybody lives in a glass house. Nobody's perfect, right? Like everybody's got something that they've done that they're probably not 100% proud of. How would you feel if you were living in that fishbowl being picked apart? And that's kind of how I approach every situation, is put myself in those shoes of like the parent, the sister, the friend, or the person. And it's like, if you don't have something positive to say, I don't know. I just don't see a point in it.
Well, it's perspective and people being objective. And the problem is, like you said, you try to look at it from both views, and that's being objective. You're looking at it from both sides, and you have perspective about the situation, and you understand, what some people are going through, and try to understand why they're doing what they're doing. But most people don't. And the whole thing, like with you mentioned with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, insecurity, jealousy. People don't like to see other people happy. I mean,
Yeah, it's weird to me. It's really weird. Like, are you that miserable in your own life? Like, you can't derive anything positive. Or like, I don't know. I mean, you got two people that are at the top of their game. You got the best tight end in the world and the best pop star in the world, and they're dating and they're happy. Like, who cares? Like, I've seen some people be like, I refuse to listen to her music now. And I'm like, that's just so insane. Or I don't want to watch the Kansas City Chiefs anymore. Like, okay, like you do you.
it's just taking it to a whole nother level, and it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And that's really, um, and unfortunately, it's what spearheaded the NFL to its largest profit ever, because people wanted to hate on them.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really sad. But the one thing I thought the NFL improved on was during the games, they weren't showing her 30 times a game. They picked and, chose certain moments, and
Yep.
were showing her less and less, and giving her the opportunity to be a fan,
Yeah.
and support her boyfriend. And I thought after the Super Bowl, it was a really powerful moment when she was on the field with him, and she was hugging him, and you could tell that,
It was genuine.
yeah, it was real.
It was 100% genuine, But it's like, I watch the Knicks a lot, right? Especially now because they're good. But like they show Spike Lee like 30 times a game. He's
Yes,
at every game. They show him 30 times. Nobody's complaining that Spike Lee's getting shown 30 times a game. Like,
no,
I mean,
yeah,
it's and into like we talked about Tony Romo before. When Tony Romo was dating Carrie Underwood, they probably showed her 15 times a game.
they did.
You
They
know,
did. They took advantage of it.
yeah, like it's all filtering too and what's relevant. It's like, you know, why do we care so much about this specific situation when it's happened a million times? I don't know. I digress, but to me it's just an interesting topic because I do think it plays into the social media thing a lot. And again, it's the access to information, it's the access to these stars that people maybe didn't have 10, 15 years ago when Tony Romo was playing in his prime. But
Well,
you know,
the fans will argue with these players on Twitter, and the players will get upset and engage with them. And I'm like, this dude's probably a nobody who's never played with a ball in his life, and you're going to let this person agitate you to the point where you're going to go back and forth and argue with them.
Yeah.
And there's no need for that. There's a reason this person is attacking you.
Yeah.
You don't need to respond to it.
Yeah.
Ignore it. Ignore it.
The more successful you are, the more you're going to be attacked. That's just the way that it is. We see that at all different levels. It's just the way that the world works. But have you been watching the Knicks series at all? You been watching any basketball?
Yeah. I've been watching the Knicks. My friend is a big Celtics fan, 76ers, and it's great to see the Knicks good for the first time in a very long time.
I
And
just think it's such a cool story. You got 3 Villanova grads that are like really, really good friends. That like Jalen Brunson, the 33rd pick in the draft, and in my opinion, he's like the second most fun player to watch right now outside of Anthony Edwards. But I was watching last night, and I think it's funny, and maybe we could talk a little bit about this next time. But some of these analysts that are on TV right now, like you really wonder. I was talking to one of my friends who watches a lot of basketball like I do, and we're like, when do you think the last time Stephen A. Smith or some of these guys like really watched a full game of basketball? And I really question it because some of the things they say is so outrageous. Like last night, the Knicks are down by 10, and Charles Barkley is like ready to write them off. Like, there's no way they can win this series. They're never going to be able to withstand Indiana. And I'm like, wow, these are like some bold statements early. And I'm looking at it like playoffs are a guard game, and the Knicks have really great guards. They play up tempo, and they're going to prevail in tough games. And they've been playing with their backs against the wall all season. So, I don't know. I'm excited to watch the rest of the series. And I think Denver's in big trouble. I don't think they're going to beat Minnesota.
who do you like is the WNBA start?
Yeah, the WNBA is going to be interesting. Obviously, this coming week we have like the first actual games. We had some preseason exhibition games. It was fun to see Caitlin Clark get out there and play pretty well, I thought, for her first outing. Because I'm on the fence on whether or not I feel like her game really like transfers over immediately to the WNBA. But the Aces are so loaded. I think that they're the favorite again if they stay healthy. They're just so deep. Asia Wilson is an absolute animal. Um, they have so many good pieces. They got a couple of really great draft picks late. And then, the Liberty in the East will be really, really good. I'm excited to watch Chicago. I actually have a little in. One of the girls who plays for me at GFA, her dad is Sydney Johnson, who just took the assistant coaching job with the Chicago Sky. And he's interesting because he's been working with USA Basketball, and he runs analytics for one of those major companies. And actually, the UConn men used his company this year and really broke down like basketball from an analytical standpoint and where to get different reads on the court, get people in certain pockets, really look at percentages of where you shoot well and be able to really change the offense based off of that. So I'm excited to see what he does with that with the Chicago Sky and bringing that to the WNBA. But I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing season for them. I think that, we've talked about this before, what Caitlin has done in terms of awareness is kind of like what Taylor Swift did for football. Like
Right.
it's a crazy frenzy. right? And I don't always agree with it because I do think that other players should be getting attention. But regardless of that, it has brought a whole new awareness and a whole new level of a demographic to the sport that we needed. And, we need her to do really well. I think that I hope that the Indiana Fever has a decent season. I think they're young still, so it might take them a year or two to really become like a contender. But uh, and the amount of people that are watching women's sports right now, basketball in specific, is at an all-time high. So it should be a really great season for them to really push the envelope in terms of getting viewership, getting more money to the league, and things of that nature. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to ask you was because do quite a bit of players still have to play in the off season? They're playing overseas in Europe or in Russia or wherever because the salary structure in the WNBA just blows my mind. It's not even a
Yeah,
thing.
I mean, it's interesting because I think they still have that cap. So your first couple of years that you're in the league, you can only make the minimum. And then after that, you can start being paid the max. So, like Caitlin Clark is making $76,000 a year on her contract. But, she just signed like, what was it? Like a $18 million deal with Nike. So,
I,
I mean, she's fine. She doesn't have to go play overseas, I don't think. And I think you'll start to see more of that. And I think NIL has really helped push that a little bit because you're getting some of that stuff early on in college. Now, does every player have those deals? No, but you also got to look at it like this: like the WNBA season runs from May to like August, September.
yeah,
So
sure.
if you're making 200 grand in 5 months,
You're
like
doing all right.
you're making more than some people are making in 12. So, I think it's all relevant. It's obviously not to the level that the men's game is yet, but you have to also look at revenue. The NBA brings in way more revenue per year than the WNBA does. So until they can get to that level, you're still going to see players that have to go overseas or that just want to go overseas, right? It's still an awesome experience. You played overseas. I played overseas. I tell every kid that has an opportunity, like go, you'll learn a ton about yourself. And I think it's a great culture experience. But we're definitely not to that point where every player can stay here in the States and be able to make enough money to provide and do the things that they want to do.
Right, right. I mean, but the thing is, the owners who negotiate the television deals, I think, give the WNBA the shaft. I think they're worth a lot more than what they're getting. And they focus more on what they can get with the NBA. And it's a lot of the same owners for the WNBA. And I don't think they negotiate as well or care as much about what they're getting because they could get a lot more. And the players deserve a lot more because you want girls to continue to work up the ladder. You want them to continue to have goals. You want them to continue to aspire to play college basketball. And that's something that has really bothered me because, I with especially with Title IX and everything, they deserve more than what they're getting. And women in this country overall are underpaid compared to men, and that's ridiculous. And that's got to change. And I don't understand what it's going to take to do that. Like what does the WNBA need to do to get $1 billion TV deal? What do they need to do to where the rookie contracts aren't $76,000? I mean, that's just
And,
unheard
I
of.
think they're taking some steps, right? Like first of all, you need more teams because you grow more teams in different markets, you're going to bring in more revenue. So they're adding one in Golden State. They're talking about one potentially in Canada. So I think that that will definitely help because you bring up you have more arenas that are packing seats. It brings the revenue up. But I think the big thing, and I'll like leave you with that, is that, people who are listening or people who are asking that same question, you got to support the sport. Like you got to go out and watch. You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
like we say that we want these people to have more and then nobody goes to a game or nobody buys a jersey. It's like, all right, well, people are still going to NBA games. Like the years that the Knicks stink, they're still selling out MSG. Like, so I think that as basketball fans, if you truly are a women's basketball fan and you want to see the game grow, that's how you can help is get out there, go watch a game, support in any way you can. That's going to help push the dial down the road.
And right now, currently, is your AAU team playing? Are you going to a lot of tournaments?
We have our first tournament actually this weekend. So I leave Thursday to go out to Sandusky, Ohio. For
Ohio,
it's where Cedar Point is. So there's a big amusement park there. They got a cool arena. So we're headed out there, and this is really once the live period starts. The younger kids they play more local, and then the older kids travel a little bit more to the exposure tournament. So we have our first one, and we'll go till about the end of July. So the next like 3 months are big AAU months.
And how do you guys travel? Do you travel by bus? Do you travel with the parents all driving?
Yeah, the parents drive. Obviously to Ohio, some will fly. I'm flying out on Thursday. I did that drive for the Final Four. I'm not doing it again. It really is up to them. That's why when they're younger, we try to keep them a little bit more local so that you keep the cost down for, travel and lodging and things of that nature. And then, again, as you get to the bigger exposure tournaments, they're further away. So you have to have more travel at that point.
And my last question to you, what do you think of Taylor Swift's new album?
I love it. Listen, I have a 12-year-old daughter, so like, she's I wouldn't say she's a Swifty, like she doesn't go nuts, but she loves Taylor Swift. I just think that she's so talented. I love the way she's carried herself. I love the way she interacts with her fans. Um, I think she's a good role model. I mean, say what you want about who she's dating now. I don't really care about that. Again, that's your personal life. It has nothing to do with your craft. So I think that, anytime that you see someone who's able to repeatedly spit out albums that are just amazing. So I'm a Swiftie. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm willing to pay like $500 for a ticket to go see her perform, but I downloaded her album the first week it was out, listened to it. Definitely a little bit of a different vibe than we've seen from her.
I thought so too. I thought it was
A little bit more reflective and a little bit more lower key.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. I hate when artists come out with albums that all sound the same.
Yeah, the bubblegum pop music stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like Drake, like a lot of my kids like Drake, and I'm like, every song sounds the same. Like, what's the difference here? So I like authentic artists. I listen to a little bit of everything. So, I'll pop Taylor in when I just feel like some pop and, some reflective type stuff. So.
And she really speaks to people with her lyrics. Like,
yeah, I agree.
You can relate to everything she says.
Yep.
And the fact that she writes everything herself, I find amazing.
It's amazing.
And that's the one thing I saw an interview where she said she can appreciate Travis because she was able to see how much time he puts in during the season, how much work goes into preparing for a game. And that's something she's never had before.
Right.
The girl I may or may not be seeing said that her ex-boyfriend kept her hidden for 7 years and wouldn't let her go out, wouldn't be seen in public, and it just drained her. And now that she went through that period, she's so happy. I'm happy that she's happy. She deserves it. She's earned it. and her music is unbelievable. And I hate to say that I am slowly becoming a Swifty myself, but don't repeat that.
I love it. So next time we'll have to talk about what our favorite Taylor Swift songs are.
I will for sure. I will for sure. So you made it. You made it through the first episode. What do you think? You're going to be a podcaster. You're going to be a great podcaster.
I love it. I love talking to like
I,
people. I love
I don't know
talking
what
about a bunch of different topics. So
you can do it all.
listen, I try to be like the jack of all trades, master of some. I don't want to say of none, but I think that I have a little bit of a knack for trying to relate to things that are out there right now and put them into simpler terms. And I think that some of the stuff that we can talk about on this platform, I think people really enjoy hearing. So I'm excited.
I am too, and I love that you're coaching. I love that you're molding the next generation of talent because you're doing it the right way, and that sends a message because so many people are not doing it the right way. And the fact that you have a high school, you have AAU, you're working with so many girls, you don't have to give back, but you are, and that says a lot about your character that you're doing it.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, and I look forward to being able to talk more of those types of dynamics and how they all play in moving forward. So I think it's important stuff.
all right. Well, I know you have a busy day. Um, this was awesome. You did a great job. You're going to be a podcast king, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
So,
no, this was great. Go enjoy the rest of your day there.
so for the first episode of Conlon and Cully, remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take two oranges and throw them back at life.